When Mitchell Hyundai unveiled the SA-23E Starfury Aurora, it was highly doubtful that anyone within either the corporation or Earth Force could predict the lasting impact it would have on the image and strength of the Earth Alliance throughout its decades of service. Granted, there were other Starfury models that came before, but the Aurora was the start of something truly special. Looking at the Starfury's flight characteristics, it's little wonder why. Its unique X design was intended for high maneuverability and speed, particularly maneuverability due to the positioning of its four Beagle Bryant 9000A particle thrust engines at the ends of each of its wings. These engines were also individually equipped with RCS thrusters and directional fins to control the Starfury's yaw, pitch, and roll. Due to this, the strike craft has been noted to perform lateral, vertical, and even complex roll maneuvers on a dime, as well as being able to perform a complete 180-degree spin in less than a second, a very impressive feat. Normally, the G-forces exerted by such maneuvering, especially under combat conditions, would play havoc with the pilot inside, which is partially the reason why a Starfury can only be piloted while wearing a full Earth Force spacesuit, which allows the occupant to both survive the G-forces, as well as any potential hull breach in the cockpit. The pilot's quote-unquote seat was also outfitted with additional compensators to aid the pilot in withstanding the extreme maneuvers a Starfury would have to perform. Perhaps according to conventional wisdom, when one looks at the impressive maneuvering power of the Starfury, an assumption might be made that the craft would be lacking in terms of offensive weaponry, but that is not the case here. The Starfury boasts 4 Copeland JC466/A pulse discharge cannons and 2 Copeland JC44 cannons, along with 8 weapon hardpoints on the underside of the top wings. Lastly, a grappling arm was also mounted on the ventral hull for towing and retrieval operations. But sometimes, regardless of how good a ship is in combat, an ill-timed energy beam or PPG bolt could spell disaster at a moment's notice. In such a case, if the Starfury's, or the pilot's, abilities failed them, then the cockpit could be ejected from the rest of the space frame and act as a short-term escape pod for the occupant until a search and rescue vessel could retrieve them, hopefully. With its impressive combination of maneuverability and firepower, it became a mainstay of the Earth Force fleet, with Starfury Auroras quickly becoming common sights on the ships and bases under the authority of the Earth Alliance, such as the Hyperion-class cruisers, which were able to support 6 fighters, while the Omega-class destroyers were able to field 2 full squadrons. And topping out the list of Starfury numbers was Babylon 5, given that it was a space station, was able to hold 4 Starfury squadrons. It's worth noting that when Starfuries needed to be launched, there could be one of 2 options. The first is that it simply leaves the hangar it was housed in, but the second is a far more involved process often seen in how the space station Babylon 5 would launch its fighters. Babylon 5 has to rotate to generate gravity inside, and near the point where the areas named Blue and Red sectors meet are 4 structures named Cobra Bays, located equidistant from each other. Each of these bays contain a select number of Starfuries, and when the go-ahead for a mission is given, a Starfury simply drops out of the bottom of the Cobra Bay and emerges out into open space, with the station's gravity essentially slinging the craft outward. Reportedly, the Omega-class destroyers use a similar method to send out Starfuries from their own rotating structure that generates gravity. Over the course of its service, the Aurora was reportedly modified into different submodels to accommodate specific mission profiles. As far as is known, there is no exhaustive list for these different variants, but there have been at least 2 that have been seen in operation. One of these Starfuries was a 2-seater variant called a Muskrat, or Badger, or simply Heavy Starfury, as its official name seemingly was unable to be agreed upon within Earth Force. Little is known about it, but it contained 1 seat for the pilot in the front, as was usual for the Auroras, but also a gunner's seat in the back armed with 2 PPG cannons. The rest of the design followed the same basic principles as a standard Starfury Aurora, but was also loaded with a chin-mounted autocannon of sorts underneath the cockpit pod. Then there was the even more elusive Stealth Starfury variant, otherwise called the Black Omega, named for the squadron which favored it. These were extraordinarily expensive to produce and even maintain, most likely due to its enhanced speed and advanced stealth capabilities. Its existence was not well known among the Earth Alliance, as Earth Force typically had them slated for Black Ops or infiltration missions. It was most commonly seen in service to the Earth Alliance Psi Corps and their Black Omega Squadron. Psi Corps would mostly use these specialized Starfuries to hunt down and destroy rogue telepaths who refused to bow to their authority. Often their overzealous hunting of rogue telepaths tended to undermine or even flat out ignore the authority of other Alliance institutions. Given the nature of its missions, one can presume that the stealth Starfury was chosen by Psi Corps specifically, as to not leave any evidence behind on their missions that could lead back to the Corps. If the Starfury Aurora was to have one glaring weakness, it was that it could not operate within an atmosphere. It could certainly enter the gravity well of a planet, but once inside it, the pilot would find his craft operating like a stuck pig in the brief span of time before it crashed into the ground. In essence, when Earth Force designates a craft as a deep space interdiction recon fighter, they damn well mean it. Technical details and variations aside, the Starfury served quite valiantly through their service history beginning at some point in the same decade before the Earth-Minbari War of 2245, when Starfuries could be seen throughout Earth Force holdings. During this conflict, it was unfortunately not to be their finest hour, although this was mostly attributed to the vastly superior abilities of the Minbari fleets and their equivalent starfighter, the Nial. After the war, the Auroras would continue to serve for decades after, even as the SA-32A Starfury Mark III Thunderbolts began being distributed throughout Earth Force fleets and holdings. The technical capabilities of the new Starfury Thunderbolt compared to the Aurora were roughly similar, although due to its expanded features, heavier armor, and superior speed and maneuverability, its pilots noticed it handled quite differently to that of the Aurora. Otherwise, the three main differences in the T-Bolt were the four Walters 40mm plasma pulse cannons, mounted on the front underside of the fuselage in a unidirectional fashion, as well as the expansion of its wing-mounted hardpoints from 8 to 10. The second was the enlargement of the cockpit area being able to accommodate two pilots, with one acting as pilot and the other acting as navigation and/or gunner. A second pilot was deemed necessary for the T-Bolt due to her expanded systems and capabilities. Because of this, some pilots didn't much care for the Thunderbolt despite its advanced nature, as the second pilot took away from their full control of the strike craft. Finally, the last difference between the Starfury Aurora and Thunderbolt was that it could enter planetary atmospheres. Close to the rear of its four engines were deployable wings that enabled aerodynamic control and created lift. One of their most prominent, though notorious displays of this ability was during the bombing of Mars at the start of the Earth Alliance Civil War. The process of the Thunderbolts being phased into Earth Force as replacements for the older Aurora were undoubtedly disrupted by the Earth Alliance Civil War of 2260. While forces loyal to President Clark's regime continued with their plans to upgrade their forces to the Thunderbolt, rebel forces, particularly those under command of Babylon 5, were forced to continue using the Aurora for both the Civil War and the Second Shadow War, fighting alongside the Rangers and their allied races against the Shadows. Although, B-5 Starfury complement would be augmented with Thunderbolts from the EAS Churchill, an Omega-class destroyer that fell during the battle for Babylon 5's independence. So, it would not be too big of a leap in logic for Starfury Thunderbolts to be seen fighting against Clark's forces, or the Shadow fleets. Though due to their presumably limited number, the T-Bolts were most likely held back unless the situation was dire enough to need them. After the successful conclusion of these galaxy-shaking events, the Starfury Aurora could still be seen in service as of the 2270s, proof that a good design ages exceptionally well. With their unique designs and powerful abilities, it should come as no surprise that the Starfury Aurora and Thunderbolt was as beloved as it was by those within the Earth Alliance. For as one of the great truths of the universe state, it is that what is built and what is loved endures. And in that spirit, the legacy of the Starfury will endure.